Jacob. After 20 years of marriage, finally Rebekah, Isaac's wife, was pregnant with twins. God told her that they would become two separate people and that the older would serve the younger. Then the twin boys were born. The older was called Esau. He was red and hairy. The younger was called Jacob. Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. Isaac favored Esau because he liked to eat his venison, but Rebekah favored Jacob. One day, Jacob was cooking stew, and Esau came from the field and he was faint. He asked for Jacob to give him some stew. Jacob was willing to give the stew only if Esau would sell his birthright to him. Esau replied, "I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me?" Thus Esau sold Jacob his birthright. When Esau was 40 years old, he married two Hittite women, descendants of the Black Ham, that made Isaac and Rebekah grieved. Before he died, Isaac, old and blind, wanted to bless the eldest son. He sent Esau to hunt meat and prepare a meal, after which he would receive his blessing. Rebekah overheard this exchange. She instructed Jacob to fetch 2 goats, prepare a meal, and commanded him to bring the meal to Isaac to receive the blessing. She placed goatskin over his neck and arms to fool Isaac in blessing Jacob. Jacob went along with the plan. Isaac blessed Jacob so that the people and nations would bow down to him, and to be the Lord over his brother, and that he would be prosperous. When Esau came back, it was too late. He only received blessing that he would also be prosperous, and that one day he would be able to be free from Jacob's dominion. Esau swore to kill Jacob as soon as his father was dead. Upon hearing this, Rebekah sent Jacob to flee to Laban, Rebekah's brother in Haran, southern Turkey. Before Isaac died, he told Jacob not to take any Canaanite wife, but to find a wife from the daughters of Laban. So Jacob departed to Haran. Meanwhile, Esau, realizing that his wives displeased his father, went to Ishmael, his uncle, and took Ishmael's daughter as a third wife. En route to Haran, Jacob stopped in a place called Luz, a town north of Jerusalem. He experienced a vision in which he saw a ladder reaching into heaven with angels going up and down, a vision that is commonly referred to as Jacob's ladder. From the top of the ladder, he heard the voice of God, who repeated many of the blessings upon him. When he woke up, he was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other but the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." He took the stone that he had used as pillow and set it up for a pillar, and poured oil on top of it. He changed the name of Luz into Bethel, meaning house of God. He vowed that whatever he received, he would give 1/10 to God. Finally, Jacob arrived at a well in Haran and met Laban's younger daughter, or his cousin, Rachel. He fell in love with her immediately, then asked for her hand in marriage in return of working for 7 years for Laban. Nevertheless, when the 7 years were completed, Laban deceived Jacob by switching his older daughter, Leah, as the veiled bride. In the morning, Laban agreed to give Rachel in marriage as well, if Jacob would work for another 7 years for him, and Jacob did. Jacob loved Rachel more than anything in the world, and Leah felt hated. God opened Leah's womb, and she gave birth to 4 sons in succession: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Since Rachel still could not get Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. Therefore she offered her handmaid Bilhah to Jacob, and 2 sons were born from her, Dan and Naphtali. At the meantime, Leah had stopped having children, although she desired more of them. So she also offered her handmaid Zilpah to Jacob, and her handmaid bore 2 more sons, Gad and Asher. One day, Reuben, Jacob's first son from Leah, found mandrakes in a field. Note, mandrake is a plant believed to ensure conception. Rachel desired the mandrakes and bartered with Leah for them. The trade offered by Rachel was for Leah to spend the next night in Jacob's bed in exchange for the mandrakes. Leah gave the plant to Rachel, but soon after Leah, who had been infertile for a while, became pregnant once more, and in time gave birth to 2 more sons, Issachar and Zebulun, and later a daughter, Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and finally Rachel bare a son called Joseph. Jacob desired to return home, but Laban was reluctant to release him because he learned through divination that he was blessed because of Jacob. Laban offered to pay Jacob if he continued to work for him. Jacob decided to continue to tend Laban's flock, but refused the wage that was offered to him. Instead, he asked that every spotted cattle to be given to him as his wage. After the agreement, Jacob made a strategy against Laban to get even. Thus, Jacob became increasingly wealthy, and Laban's friendly attitude towards Jacob changed. God told Jacob to leave. Jacob left and headed back to his homeland Canaan without informing Laban, because he was deceived by Laban. He had to work for 7 years and was married to Leah instead of Rachel. Then he had to work for another 7 years to be married to Rachel. Then he still had to stay another 6 years, and during that 20 years, Laban had changed his wages 10 times. But God was on his side. Therefore, God gave Laban's riches to him. Before they left, Rachel stole Laban's religious icons, and sure enough, Laban pursued Jacob. Finally, when the 2 met, Laban played the part of the injured father-in-law and demanded his icons back. Knowing nothing of Rachel's action, Jacob said whoever stole them must die. Rachel hid the icons by sitting on them. Laban did not search Rachel's seat because Rachel was having her woman custom of the month. So Laban could not find the proof of the theft done by Jacob's party. Jacob got angry at Laban's quote-unquote false accusation, but Laban reminded him that they were family and that no harm should be done. Then Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. He offered sacrifice upon it, and they made an agreement that neither would pass over the pillar with a harmful intention. Further, Jacob swore that he would never take any other wife than the ones that he had. Thus, Jacob and Laban part from each other in peace. Jacob and his family continued their journey, but they had to pass the land of Seir, the country of Edom, today eastern Jordan. He was afraid and distressed to meet his brother Esau. At the same night, while Jacob was alone, a man wrestled with him. The man, quote-unquote, pleaded to be released, but Jacob demanded a blessing before doing so. Somehow he knew that the man, quote-unquote, was in fact an angel or even God himself. Note, the passage is not very clear. Kindly check Genesis 32. The man, quote-unquote, announced to Jacob that from there on his name would be changed into Israel, meaning one who have struggled or wrestled with God and with men and have overcome. During the wrestle, the man touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh. Therefore, to this day, the children of Israel do not eat the sinew upon the hollow of the thigh. Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." In the morning, Jacob assembled his wives and 11 sons, placing Rachel and her children at the rear, Leah and her children in the front. Jacob himself took the foremost position. Esau came with 400 men. Jacob moved towards Esau and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. His wives and children also bowed themselves. Esau's spirit of revenge thus was appeased. Their union was an emotional one. Jacob offered gifts to Esau, but Esau declined, for he was also prosperous. Then Esau offered to accompany them on their way back to Canaan, but Jacob refused. Esau went back to Seir. Finally, Jacob arrived in Shechem in Canaan, and he bought a piece of land. There he erected an altar for God and called it El Elohe Israel. The God of Israel is God. Dinah and Shechem. One day, Dinah was spotted by the prince of the region, who was also called Shechem, like the name of the city. He took her to his palace and defiled her. Dinah's brothers were outraged by what had happened. But Shechem was truly in love with Dinah. Shechem and his father suggested a proper wedding, a huge dowry, and a permanent treaty befitting both people. Dinah's brothers conceded with the condition that all the men be circumcised. Shechem and his people agreed. 3 days later, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, entered the city and slaughtered all the male inhabitants and took Dinah away. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their cattle, and that which is in the city, and that which was in the field, and all their wealth, and all their little ones, and their wives took they captive, and spoiled even all that was in the house. Jacob was not pleased, and said to Simeon and Levi, "You have troubled me to make me stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and I, being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my house." But they replied, "Shall he deal with our sister as with a harlot?" Birth of Benjamin and the mistake of Reuben. God commanded Jacob to go to Bethel and to dwell there and to make an altar to God. As Jacob and his entourage neared the border of Canaan, Rachel went into labor and died as she gave birth to her second and Jacob's 12th son, Benjamin. While living in that land, Reuben laid with Bilhah, one of Jacob's concubines. Judah and Tamar. Later, Judah married a Canaanite woman. They had 3 sons, Er, Onan, and Shelah. Er married Tamar, but Er was wicked in the sight of God, so God slew him. Then Judah said to Onan, "Go in unto your brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to your brother." Onan knew that the seed would not be of his, and when he went into his brother's wife, he spilled it on the ground, lest he should give seed to his brother. The thing which he did displeased God, wherefore he slew him also. According to custom, Tamar was then promised to the 3rd son, Shelah. This promise was not fulfilled. So Tamar disguised herself as a prostitute and offered herself to Judah, her father-in-law, whose wife already died at that time. Tamar claimed Judah's stuff and signet as a pledge of payment. When she later became pregnant with twin sons, Judah accused her of fornication and sought for her to be punished by burning to death. But she produced the stuff and signet and identified Judah herself as the father. Judah realized that what had happened was a result of his own mistake, so he said, She is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Selah, and he did not sleep with her again. Jacob continued the journey and was finally reunited with his father Isaac. Then Isaac died at the age of 180.